Case Study Hitler Part 2. Adolf's membership in the DAP became a perfect fit to share his narcissistic psychopathology. Soon after joining, Adolf changed the DAP to the NSDAP, which is had the abbreviation that popularized Nazism, or Nazis. The Nazi doctrine, its idealization of Germany and vilification of Jews, projected his archaic self-object idealization of his mother onto the German people. Simultaneously, it also projected his hatred toward his half-Jewish father, alloy onto the Jewish people in Germany and elsewhere. The mass mobilization, authoritarianism, uniformity, and groupthink in the Nazi social order all turned the German people into the collective objects of his twinship transference. According to Kohut, twinship is when a person's self-object is perceived as a replica or extension of oneself. This is common among narcissists. They're deeply insecure people who are looking for an audience. And if they can find the right person who they can manipulate into becoming an audience to them, they're treated like a twinship object. They're not treated like their own autonomous person with their own dreams, goals, life, but basically as an extension of the narcissist. Sex life. Adolf lacked an ability to be intimate with women, which was largely due to never overcoming his self-object idealizations about his mother. His psychosexual deficits caused Adolf to be inhibited around women. According to high-ranking Nazis like Albert Speer and Baldur von Schirach, he was polite around them but never at ease in their presence. His relationship with Eva Braun was reported to have been neglectful toward her personal needs. Instead, Eva functioned as a representation of the idealized self-object, from whom he always sought attachment. More or less, she was basically treated as a trophy to represent his grandeur, his power, his status. He had allegations made against him about a possible incestuous relationship with his half-niece, Gelly Robel. And Gelly had been a daughter of Adolf's half-sister Angela. She lived with Adolf in Munich from 1929 to 1931. She was in her early 20s at the time, and she was studying medicine at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. The allegations were first made by Nazi Party official Otto Strasser, who alleged that their relationship started when Gelly was only 17 and still living in Ober-Salzburg, which I think is a little town near the Austrian border. Strasser said that he found out when a local priest had acquired an incriminating letter that he had sold back to the party, that basically that his relationship with his niece was not a family, but it was abnormal. While living in Munich with Adolf, Gelly had fallen in love with his chauffeur, Emil Maurice, who she was secretly dating. However, Adolf began to become controlling and forbade her to see Emil or her friends. On September 18, 1931, she was found dead from a gunshot wound. The death was ruled a suicide. Adolf's brother, Aloy Jr., alleged that Gelly was actually carrying his child. All speculation aside, Hermann Goering reported that Adolf sunk into a near-suicidal depression afterwards and had mourned in isolation for like 2 days. While the two ate breakfast in Hamburg shortly after Gelly's death, Adolf confided to Hermann that he could not eat the ham because it is like eating a corpse. Hermann recalled that he never saw Adolf eat meat again after that. Adolf had his most intimate relationships with men that may indicate latent homosexuality. Joseph Greiner reported that Adolf was not uncomfortable socializing with gays and lesbians. When he asked him about this, Adolf replied, "Don't worry, I am too tubercular to be attractive to either men or women." He tolerated brown shirt leader Ernst Röhm's homosexual relationships with other brown shirt members, provided that Rome had remained loyal to him, which he didn't, and he ended up having Ernst Röhm, along with Otto Strasser and other Nazi faction leaders, all basically violently massacred on the Night of the Long Knives in 1931, I believe. Let's see. Despite probable latent homosexual tendencies, Adolf's unresolved psychosexual energies had found an outlet in his compatible ideological beliefs, Nazism, which he released through his hate-filled speeches by which he experienced twinship transference with the German public. Just to kind of clarify what I meant by that last part, all about Nazism and German society and how it was run by him made the German people collectively a mirror for his narcissistic ego. That the more they responded to his narcissistic ego by putting him more and more on a platform, by exalting him, by admiring him, the more megalomaniacal he became. Diagnosis. I would diagnose Adolf Hitler with narcissistic personality disorder. According to the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a need for admiration and lack of empathy beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more symptoms. Adolf would qualify for narcissistic personality disorder since he meets 8 out of 9 of the symptoms in criterion A. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that if somebody had 9 out of 9 symptoms, that they're just as evil and megalomaniacal as Hitler was, because there are other dynamics to his personality, which I'll get to, that differentiate him from other narcissists. But yeah, he had 8 out of 9 of the symptoms in criterion A. The first one has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognizable as superior without commensurate achievements. Adolf was grandiose, whether he thought he was a master painter or the Messiah who would save Germany from her enemies and restore her to greatness. Is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Adolf lived in a fantasy world based off of a heroic history of Germany taught by his secondary school teacher, Dr. Leopold Potsch. He surrounded himself with his Germanic fantasy, with himself at the center, and the hero of the drama, the man who would triumph through his own will as Germany's savior. Third criterion would be requires excessive admiration. Adolf's entire life was a search for admiration from others. As a highly insecure individual with deep-seated feelings of inferiority, he was only to feel self-cohesive, secure, and soothed as an individual, as authoritarian ruler of a nation, with the citizenry acting like a twin-ship self-object and mirroring his megalomania. Criterion 4 has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment, or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Adolf expected that he'd be admitted into Vienna Academy of Fine Arts with subpar artwork. He expected the 17-year-old female model to undress in front of him after he showed obvious signs of being infatuated with her, which made her uncomfortable. He then attacked her physically in a fit of rage after she wouldn't comply with his wishes. Is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her ends. Adolf viewed others only as a means to gain power and status for himself. On a macro level, his love, quote-unquote, of the German people was based on their unquestioning devotion and conformity to his vision of how the world should have been in his mind. On an individual level, he used Eva Braun as a status object. Adolf used other Nazi party members as pawns in his rise to total power. Not ever considering that party officials like Ernst Röhm or Otto Strasser were individuals with their own personal autonomy and goals, he had them eliminated for being disloyal to him. Lacks empathy and is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Adolf lacked empathy toward others. Everyone was either a tool to use to reach his personal ends or a persecutory other who needed to be destroyed. whether they were Jewish, Slavic, Roman Catholic, gypsies, communists, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. Adolf's anti-Semitic beliefs weren't just based on treating Jewish people like the scapegoated other. There was subconscious envy of the success and wealth that Jewish people achieved in German society that he was unable to attain personally. He projected his envy onto them, his envy of them back onto them, and accused them of being parasites that fed off the nation's livelihood. When he was rejected by the female model and then found out that she chose a half-Jewish businessman as her fiancé, he not only experienced narcissistic rage, but envy of the fiancé. Shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Following Adolf's rejection by the model, he wrote a letter to the fiancé that insulted and threatened him. He subsequently confronted them both in public in an attempt to humiliate them both. He attempted to confront them a second time at their wedding. Adolf refused to accept the criticism about why he was not accepted into the Vienna Academy of Arts. Instead, he criticized members of the admissions panel as being Jews. Adolf appeared to have malignant narcissism. According to Fromm and Kernberg, malignant narcissists are the most dangerous type. They not only present with narcissistic traits that are higher in hostility and anger, lower in psychosocial and interpersonal functioning, but have antisocial, psychopathic, and even sadistic traits as well. Adolf demonstrated psychopathic traits like boldness and callous unemotionality. Though most of his political activity was not covered here, Adolf led a failed coup in Munich to overthrow the Weimar Republic in Bavaria in 1923. A short-term alliance was established beforehand that brought conservative government officials in Munich, monarchists and Catholic centrists in league with the Nazis. The coup began on November 8th when Adolf and his armed comrades disrupted the meeting held by Bavarian and city officials, including the president minister, at a local beer hall and proclaimed the establishment of a new government. It ended the next morning when police broke up the march to seize power in a gun battle. The failure of what is referred to as the beer hall putsch was because the army didn't back the coup plotters. Just an example of him using people as tools to serve his ends, Adolf had lied to World War I hero General Erich Ludendorff into joining the coup plotters, using assurances that the army was with them in their coup. To make a long story short, Adolf demonstrated this type of... Basically, he had lied to Ludendorff. It was not definite the army was going to back the coup plotters, but he led Ludendorff to believe that just to get him involved. To make a long story short, Adolf demonstrated the type of boldness common to individuals who are higher on the spectrum of psychopathy. They are reckless in that they are not only willing to put everything on the line to accomplish their goals, including risking their own lives, but also the lives of those around them. The other psychopathic trait of callous unemotional affect, also known as meanness, was characteristic of Adolf's personality. Whether it was dehumanizing Jews as rats, parasites, or bacteria, or overseeing the bloody conquest of Europe and invasion of Russia for German Lebensraum, or living space, he had callous disregard for the lives of others.